The government has maintained that the country is overbanked and that plans to reduce the number of banks are still in the pipeline. Central Bank Governor Dr. Kamau Thuge made the remarks during the commencement of Equity's Kenya NDRC Investors Roadshow.
Today has been a very busy day. We are preparing for our first graduation for the Open University of Kenya, which is a public university, by the way. And then there is a story I wanted to share early in the morning. I've gathered some information. Of course, I gathered it from when the budget was, proposed last year, because the same regulation and the same requirement that was in the budget that banks increase their capital from 1 billion to 10 billion over a period of 3 years will push 24 banks out of the market because they will not be able to afford it. For example, there are banks like, they are not very big. There are banks like Credit Bank, probably, and other banks that are not that big. They're not tier 1 banks. Okay, they are tier 2 and tier 3. They will not be able to sustain operations because over 3 years, where do you get an investor to put 10 billion in your bank? You need a longer period. In short, I think the plan is the banks to merge. For example, you take the 24, each one of them holding 1 billion. That's 24 billion. Divide by 10, you create 2 banks. So out of the 24, the scenario is if you squeeze yourself, can you, all of you, the 24, create at least 4 banks? So that's the idea. It's not bad, but each bank is very unique with their clientele. And I believe that we should build banks because now raising these threshold will push the growth of microfinances to transition to banks a bit longer. It will take longer to transition to become a bank. And some of these microfinances, they have worked too hard. For example, like a Unitas. Unitas, I don't think it has gotten to the status of a bank up to now. They are still operating, I think, under UBA. You see? So I think you can make business a bit better by allowing banks to keep on building these deposit over a period probably of 10 years, so that you say in 10 years, by 2034, all the banks must have 10 billion as their deposit, so that banks like Family Bank, Senior Bank, and others can be able to build these, capital over a period of time. What the government is doing, I don't think it will work. It is threatening banks, and this will force us now to be squeezed into the banks that probably do not serve our interest, do not feel the mkulima mdogo, ini ya watu mabwenyenye, watu wakubwa. These are banks that are very powerful. They don't really care about small businesses. But the banks that are going to close are the businesses that are the backbone of the economy, the backbone of the MSMEs. And this is something that the government needs to look at because it's not good. Finally, it is not that the banks have no money circulating. No, that's not true. This is a regulation issue. It's not a currency or liquidation issue. No, I don't think that is the problem. This is just, it was proposed in the budget, and I think it has been brought back by Bandi in the changes of the bills that they are bringing through the back door, of course, the ones that we rejected during the demonstrations. That's my take on this.
I'm very sure all of you have been making observations that the Kenyan economy has not been performing very well lately. Look at the number of businesses which are shutting down, which are collapsing, in other words. Small-scale businesses, medium-sized businesses, even the big ones, the large businesses, are kind of struggling. Yeah. And not only that, If you've been keen enough, you must have observed that businesses which used to close their operations, maybe let's say at 10 p.m., 11 p.m. into the night, 12 a.m. in the night, people are now opting to shut down. I mean, not really shut down, to close down by around 7 p.m., 8 p.m. They are done. And this is happening in all the major cities and towns in this country, including in Nairobi. So some time back, you would, even at the beginning of this year, I mean, businesses were closing down by, 11 p.m. But right now, it's a pity. And this tells you that the amount of money that is circulating generally in the economy is quite low. So obviously we got to this point by, first of all, the huge amount of public debt, which necessitated an increase in taxes. So when taxes are increased in an economy, generally what happens is people will have less money in their pockets. And that means less consumption, less spending. And obviously, when you check around different economies of the world, economies are usually driven by consumption and spending. So when these two are decreasing or are down, then there will be an overall decline in economic productivity or the rate of economic production at any given point of time. Anyway, some time back, I mean 3-4 years back, you'd walk into a supermarket with let's say maybe 20,000, 15,000 shillings to buy some maybe let's say household stuff or effects. But nowadays, you go with that amount of money in a supermarket, I mean, you'll feel kind of depressed. You'll feel like crying. You'll feel as if you're not getting value for your money, simply because the cost of living is becoming unbearable in this country, and that is a fact. Either way, I don't really see how we are going to get out of this mess anytime soon. This is more of a very long-term challenge which can only correct itself after so many years. I want to challenge you to go and read the case of Ghana, because I believe we are going to end up like Ghana. Ghana at some point was a poster child. It was a PR kind of country, or let's say experiment for the IMF and the World Bank. It was doing well economically at some point. Then it was being cheered on by the West and these other institutions that this is a model country that is leading the way, that is showing the way in sub-Saharan Africa. Then these guys, they got themselves into huge public debts and then high taxation. And then they have been going in for IMF bailouts every now and then. Go and read the case of Ghana, because that's where I believe we are that's where we're headed as a country. And I really sympathize with guys who do not really have some good jobs in this country, or whose businesses are performing poorly. It's quite depressing. I mean, it's hard to be a Kenyan at this time, to live through these tough economic times. I mean, but I strongly believe that even the government, the Kenya Kwanza regime, is a little bit cautious. It's aware that things could be getting out of hand in this country, and probably there are early indications of recession, as I mentioned at the beginning. Why? Recently, the Central Bank of Kenya, went ahead to reduce, what do we call it, the interest rates, of the lending rates, the rates at which it lends to the money to the banks, and those kind of things. If you've also been keen enough recently, what happened? The government also went ahead to reduce the prices of, fuel by almost 7 to 8 shillings. So that tells you that the government is pretty much aware that things are not really rosy. And for heaven's sake, one way in which this economy can be, rejuvenated. If I were the president, or if I were one of his advisors, what I'd simply tell him, or what I would simply do if I was the president, I would give directives that why don't we think of cutting taxes, reducing taxes in this country? And my argument will be based on the fact that we as a country do not have a problem with collecting tax revenue. We don't. Our problem is spending the amount of money that we collect. So however much, even if we get to a point as a country where we are collecting 5 trillion in terms of revenue, it will not automatically translate to proper development. Until we fix corruption, that's when we progress. But at this time, I think we need to have conversations. The government needs to consider cutting taxes. For those ones who are employed, if you're paying your income tax at the rate of 30%, 25%, that can be cut by 5%. You know? And I'm telling you, things will start improving, because as long as people do not have enough money in their pockets, I'm sorry, but we are in for a very long decade ahead of us.
We don't know why our banks, and soon we are going to call them out, why our banks are giving our money to our government for bonds that do not exist in the budget. And then our taxes are going to pay those exorbitant interest rates.
Back to the banks.
Back to the banks. This is a Ponzi scheme of some banks here, and they better stop it. They better stop it. They have created oligarchs of themselves at our expense, and they better stop it. Their time is now coming to an end. They better stop it.
You like me, why them a fight me? You like me, chewing a bone, a bite it. You like me, chewing a bite it. Don't like how I do. We don't trust them, even if we bust them. We don't trust them, stay far, not touch them. We don't trust them, we'll be a man, not sub them. In farm, I may say, you must them.